Hello everyone and welcome to lesson 14.1B. I've entitled this video, Bodies of Water and Climate of East Asia. This video is going to cover pages 435 to 437. Bodies of water. Bodies of water in East Asia provide food for its people, give them a place to live, move their goods, and power factories to light homes. Fish and other seafood caught in the seas and ocean make up an important part of the diet of many East Asians. Question number 1. What are the 4 ways that East Asians use their bodies of water? Number 1, for food. Number 2, to have a place to live. Number 3, to transport/move their goods. And number 4, to provide hydroelectric power to give power to their factories so they can have electricity. Question 2. What are the 2 main food sources that East Asians get from their bodies of water? They get fish and other seafood. 4 large seas sit along East Asia's eastern edge. The largest is the South China Sea. It is partly enclosed by Taiwan, southeastern China, and islands of Southeast Asia. Because the South China Sea lies between important ports in the Pacific and Indian Oceans, it has some of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. Question 3. What important sea is home to some of the busiest shipping lanes in the world? The South China Sea, right here. The East China Sea lies between China and Japan's Ryukyu Islands, a long archipelago extending southwestward toward Taiwan. In the north, this sea meets the Yellow Sea, which is shaped by the Korean Peninsula, and the northeastern coast of China. Farther north, Japan, the Korean Peninsula, and the Asian mainland together are shaped like a corral that almost entirely encircles the Sea of Japan, sometimes called the East Sea. Rivers in China. The water of East Asia's 2 most important rivers, the Huanghe, Yellow River is the other name for that, and the Changyang, the Yangtze River, flow across China. And you can see those pictures here. Here's the Yellow River, also called the Huanghe, and then you have the Yangtze River, also called the Changyang. Both of these rivers begin high on the plateau of Tibet in southwestern China and flow down the eastern slope of the plateau. The Huanghe flows by twists and turns to the Yellow Sea far to the east. Along the way, it picks up a tremendous amount of yellow-brown silt called loess. This silt gives the river and the sea their name and color. Question number 4. What are the 2 most important rivers in East Asia? They are the Huanghe and the Changyang. Question 5. What is loess? That is the yellow-brown silt. Question number 6. Why is the Yellow River called the Yellow River? Because of the loess that it picks up. And because that loess is yellow-brown in color, it makes the river look also yellow. Thus, that's how you get the name of the river and the sea. In eastern China, silt deposited by floods over millions of years has created a broad, fertile plain called the North China Plain, pictured here. This is one of China's most productive farming areas. Throughout history, however, floods have regularly destroyed homes and crops and have drowned many people. For this reason, the Huanghe is sometimes called China's sorrow. Question number 7. Why is the North China Plain so fertile? Because over millions of years, that silt, that loess, has been deposited over that land, and that is very fertile soil. Makes it great for farming crops. Question 8. Why is the Yellow River sometimes called China's sorrow? Because over history it has flooded many times. It destroys homes, it destroys crops, and many people have drowned in the path of the Yellow River. Like the Huanghe, the Changyang begins on the plateau of Tibet. From its headwaters, it flows about 3,450 miles to its mouth at the port of the city of Shanghai on the East China Sea. And you can see that pictured right here. It is the longest river in Asia and the 3rd longest in the world. Only the Nile, that we've studied, and the Amazon that we've studied are longer. The Changyang is China's principal waterway. It also provides water for a fertile farming region where more than 2/3 of the country's rice is grown. Nearly 1/3 of China's people live in the river's basin. Question number 9. What is the longest river in Asia and the third longest river in the world? That is the river of the Changyang. Question number 10. What are 3 main reasons why the Changyang River, or Yangtze River, is China's most important river? Well, number 1, it is their principal waterway because it provides water for the people living in that area. So you've got water. It also provides the ability to grow the rice, and nearly 2/3 of the country's rice is grown in that region. And also, it is the main waterway of China, so it's a lot of travel takes place on that as well. Rivers in Japan and Korea. Japan's major rivers are relatively short, steep, and swift. They flow down from the mountains into the interior of the islands to low plains along the coast. Most of the rivers, including the 2 longest, the Shinano and the Town, generate hydroelectric power. Question number 11. How did the Japanese get power from the Shinano and the Town River? They get it through creating hydroelectric power, and we've studied that concept in many chapters, where you use the flowing water to using a combination of dams and that to cause hydroelectric power. The main rivers of the Korean peninsula flow from inland mountains westward toward the Yellow Sea. The Han River flows through South Korea's capital, Seoul. North Korea's longest river, the Yalu, or Amnak, form the country's border with China. And you can see that pictured here. Climate. A traveler to East Asia would encounter a great range of climates, from hot and rainy to cold and dry. This is partly due to the area's vast size and partly because of its range of elevation. Climate factors. East Asia spans a tremendous distance north to south. The region's southernmost land lies within Earth's hot tropical zone, while the northernmost land sits closer to the frigid North Pole than to the equator. Much of the climate variation results from these differences in latitude. Another important factor is land elevation. Higher areas are generally colder than lower areas. 2 areas at the same latitude can have very different climates if one area is much higher than the other. This situation is found in many parts of East Asia. Air masses also play a major role in shaping East Asia's climate zones. A cold, dry, polar air mass spreads southward from northern Asia during the colder months of the year. A warm, moist tropical air mass spreads northward and eastward from the Pacific Ocean during the warmer months. Question number 12. Why does East Asia's climate tremendously vary? Because of its vast size and partly because of its range of elevation. Question 13. What is the first factor that can impact East Asia's climate? Well, it's latitude, meaning where is it at on the Earth? Is it higher in latitude, closer to the North Pole, or is it more southern in its latitude, closer to the equator? That can have the first impact on its climate. Question 14. What is the second factor that can impact East Asia's climate? Well, it's land elevation. How much higher in the air, how much higher up is it? Because as we know, generally the higher up you go, the colder that it gets. And so those changes in elevation can have a huge impact on its climate. And that answers question 15. In general, how does land elevation impact temperatures? The higher up you go, generally the colder it gets. Question 16. What is the third factor that can impact East Asia's climate? The air masses. And as we saw, sometimes you can get that cold, dry polar air that comes from the north and spreads southward. And then sometimes you get the warm, moist tropical air mass that spreads northward and eastward that comes from the Pacific Ocean during the warmer months. So those are your 3 factors. Climates in the east. Southeastern China stays hot and rainy through much of the year. Vegetation is lush, and conditions are ideal for growing grain, especially rice. Farther north in eastern China, more seasonal variation occurs. Summers are hot and rainy, but winters are cold and fairly dry. China's capital, Beijing, lies in this part of the country. In the summer, temperatures in Beijing often soar above 90 degrees Fahrenheit. In the winter, icy winds from the northwest whip through the city, and temperatures can drop below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Being surrounded or nearly surrounded by water affects the climates of East Asia's island and peninsula countries, Taiwan, Japan, and North and South Korea. These countries are generally wetter and experience milder temperatures than mainland areas at the same latitudes. Question number 17. Due to its climate, what grows extremely well in southeastern China? Grain, but especially rice. Question 18. Why are the climates of East Asia's island and peninsula countries different from the climates of the rest of East Asia? Well, because they are surrounded or nearly surrounded by water, it generally makes their climate wetter and milder. So not as hot or as cold as some of the other places during the winter or summers in those different regions. So because they are surrounded or nearly surrounded by water, that makes their climate much wetter and also milder. So the extremes aren't quite as much. Climates in the north, northwest, and southwest. Across north central and northwestern China and neighboring Mongolia, the climate ranges from semi-arid, somewhat dry, to arid, very dry. Winters are bitterly cold. This sparsely populated area includes the vast rocky Gobi Desert and the sandy Taklamakan Desert. It also has great expanses of treeless grasslands. The plateau of Tibet in southwestern China also has a dry climate. This is mainly because the towering Himalaya block moist air flowing northward from the Indian Ocean. Because the plateau sits at such a high elevation, the weather is cold and windy throughout the year. Question number 19. How is the climate for north central China, northwestern China, and Mongolia? The climate can range from somewhat dry to arid, very dry, and the winters are extremely cold. Question number 20. What is the climate like in the plateau of Tibet? It also has a dry climate, and the weather is usually cold and windy throughout the year. Well, thank you so much for watching. Before we go, of course, I've got something for you. I enjoy this headline. See if you can enjoy the duh of this headline. China may be using sea to hide its submarines. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.